Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark, one of the best beer cities in the world these days in my opinion, one of my favourite places to go, and we're going to return to one of my favourite Danish breweries. These guys have featured on the channel many times before. I've had some awesome beers from these guys over the years, a lot of different styles, but the beer we're going to have a look at today is one that I was particularly excited for when I saw it was being released through Facebook and Instagram. I was a bit concerned I was going to miss this one actually, because the border between Sweden and Denmark is unfortunately closed at the moment for non-essential travel, but I was quite happy when I saw this one was being released over here in Sweden as well. So hopefully it's another nice beer from them, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review we are going to go to Kastrup in the south of Copenhagen, and we're having a look at another beer from Amager Bryghus. So this particular beer is called the Batch 2000. It comes in at 7% ABV, and this one is a West Coast IPA. So yeah, this one I believe is a kind of continuation of the Batch 1000 that they did a good few years ago. That's one of my favourite beers that these guys have ever produced, and in my opinion I think that's one of the best West Coast IPAs that's been produced in Europe, period. So yeah, I think that was an awesome beer, and so when I saw they were re-releasing Batch 1000 and also doing this one, I was just really excited to try it, but as I say, a little bit concerned that I might not be able to get it. But we got this beer here in Sweden as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget on the 1st of May 2021. So yeah, as I said, very much looking forward to this one. So let's crack on with the review and see how we get on. So as always with my review then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Amager Bryghus before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly of course, because I live very close to Denmark and I love my Danish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Amager Bryghus then. So Amager Bryghus, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Kastrup in Copenhagen in Denmark, and these guys are probably one of the best known Danish craft breweries. I think they're one of the bigger by volume ones as well, outside of the likes of Tool and Mikkeller. So these guys were one of the biggest by volume Danish based Danish beer producers, because of course gypsy brewing has been a big thing over there for quite some time. But this brewery was established back in April of 2007 by two friends, Morten Valentin Lundsbak and Jakob Storm, and both of these guys had been avid homebrewers for a number of years. But apparently in school the pair were forced to do a chemistry and physics project together, so they wrote about the fermentation process in beers, and from then they were hooked. So they both went on to gain their brewing diplomas from the Scandinavian Brewing School in 2008, and then the company has gone on to be highly decorated. But their first brewery was located in Tornby in the southern part of the city, and they've been constantly expanding over the last few years. But they had to buy a whole new brew kit in 2011, which took their capacity up to around 250,000 litres, but they managed to kind of push it up even further to 400,000 litres in their first brewery. But a little bit later on they moved to a new site closer to the airport in 2018. This doubled their capacity, and in more recent times as well they've also opened up their tap house bar in Copenhagen, which is next to Nørreport Station. So I need to go there and actually film a little out and about review once Copenhagen opens up and things like that. But they also opened up another bar in Amager, their kind of home district if you like, because I believe both Morten and Jakob are from Amager, and that's why they named the brewery Amager Bryghus. But they opened up another bar in Amager in April of 2019, which is called Bryghus. So I need to go and check that out at some stage as well. But as of May 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced around 285 different kinds of beer. They do a whole host of different styles, and yeah, they're a very, very solid and very consistent brewery in my opinion. Probably my favourite beers I've had from these guys, it would be the Batch 1000. As I mentioned to you earlier, in my opinion, one of the best West Coast IPAs that's ever been produced in Europe. Arctic Sunstone was an awesome one. Winter in Bangalore I always enjoyed as well. And then one of the really classic Danish craft beers, in my opinion, Herr Fredriksen, which is one of their big imperial stouts actually. So that is a beer that you definitely need to try and get a hold of at some stage. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Amager Bryghus for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and see how we get on with this beer. Hopefully this one is as good as the Batch 1000. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this before we open it up. As you can see, it's a little bit, the camera I don't think likes the colour of this one all that much, but there you can see Batch 2000, and then you can see Amager Bryghus. They have of course changed their artwork very slightly since they started using the cans, but it says on the side here, it seems like only yesterday when we released a beer that turned out to be one of our most successful IPAs ever, and a beer which seems to have a cult following that insists on us bringing it back. Exactly, Batch 1000, awesome stuff. But now we're already at Batch 2000. Well, to be completely honest, we brewed Batch 2000 a long time ago, but we've saved the actual batch number for this release, waiting to find the right hops to give you something special. We would love to dedicate this beer to the true Amager Bryghus fans, to those who show up at our events, whether at the brewery or festival all across the world, those that appreciate our beers and what we stand for, those that understand genuine and constant quality and aren't prone to chasing cheap thrills or the most recent fad around the corner. Dude and dudettes, we salute you. As we have said so many times before, you made us what we are and we wouldn't be here without you. Thank you. That's pretty awesome, I have to say. But yeah, they're right. Batch 1000 for me, it's a ridiculously good IPA, that, but you can see on the side this is actually batch number 2456. I don't know if they brewed a separate batch to send over here to Sweden. I can't remember when they actually released this. I think it might have been like the end of March. I think it was like in March it was originally released, and this one says it's best before February 2022, so they put a year on these things. But yeah, 440 milliliter can, this one. I think I paid like 50 or 55 Swedish kroners for this one, so let's go with 55 just to be safe. So 55 Swedish kroners is roughly €5.50, about £5 sterling then, and maybe in the region of $6.50 American. So yeah, not bad actually. But remember, when an equivalent Swedish beer over here, we would pay about 10 crowns less. You tend to pay an extra 10 crowns or €1 in Systembolaget for the foreign beers, because there's a sort of import fee. The import companies have got to get a wee slice of the action, if you like. But yeah, they always tell you the profile on the beer as well. So the malt base in this one is Pilsner, Munich and Melanoid malt, so quite a straight shooting malt base. And then the hops in this one are quite interesting. So there's Summit, Columbus, Amarillo, Mosaic, Simcoe, Idaho 7 and Cascade. So yeah, Summit is a really interesting one, very high alpha acid, that about 16%, gives you a big orangey and grapefruity type thing. It's quite an old school tasting hop, that, but I believe it's fairly new. Not had it too often actually. Columbus is one of the old school bittering hops as well. Again, well, all of the hops in this one are American. Columbus is about 14% alpha acid, big spicy kind of green notes. Amarillo, lovely big oily orange, about 12% alpha acid. Mosaic, a lighter tangerine and a wee touch of pineapple, I think. 14% alpha acid. Simcoe is a kind of oily passion fruity note in a West Coast IPA. It can be very soft in a New England though, about 12% alpha acid. Idaho 7's a really interesting one, very soft, mixed tropical fruits and things like that. You know, pineapples, papayas, and apricots and things like this, about 14 alpha acid. And then Cascade is your kind of OG American West Coast hop, about 8% alpha acid. It's got a bit of grapefruit to it, but it also gives you some really nice kind of red fruity. Like I always find you get a little bit of a black curranty and figgy thing out of Cascade as well. It's a very distinctive hop, that. But yeah, lovely, beautifully presented. Black top can on this one, as you tend to get from Amager Bryghus. 7% West Coast IPA. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the taste, and then very, very curious. Also uses a US ale yeast, which is quite common for Amager Bryghus. But yeah, let's go for it with this one. Just so happy that this beer made it over here to Sweden, because otherwise I would have struggled to get this. I don't tend to order much beer online actually, but I have to admit, when I saw this one through Kiosk and things, I was quite tempted to do it. So yeah, but yeah, that's maybe about 3/4 of the beer, 80% or so in the glass. So that'll do for having a look at it at the moment. So yeah, this one looks very interesting. But yeah, as you can see, before the head disappears, this one's poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. That's definitely not a perfect white head in my opinion. A nice cream coloured head, this one. It's poured a lovely, sort of very rich amber colour. Actually, so I would suggest that most of the colour in this beer will either be coming from the melanoidin or the Pilsner malt in this, so a lovely rich amber colour actually. It does, I think that probably is about the same colour as the batch 1000 was, come to think of it. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and you can see the beer does have a degree of kind of natural haze to it. But nothing out of the ordinary regarding this beer in terms of its appearance. It looks as pretty much as you would expect of a West Coast IPA. So yeah, definitely one of the richer and more amber coloured ones that I've come across before. So remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. A West Coast IPA like this is going to undergo a boil of like 70 to 90 minutes. You do get longer boiled ones than this, but yeah, let's say the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus darker colour of beer. But it's dependent on the malts that you use in the first place. Adjuncts and barrel aging, of course, will play a role too, but they're not at play in this particular beer. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. I can smell the cascade out of it already just from sugaring it around, but let's go in and have a closer look. Smells very nice. It's a big, the first impression of this is it's a big oily and very, juicy, fruity sort of thing. Yeah. That's an awesome beer, this one. I think, just from memory, I could be wrong, but I think the batch 1000 has a slightly less complex, or a slightly more complex, malt base to it than this one does. So this is just melanoidin, Pilsner malt, and what was the other one? The other one was Munich malt actually, yeah, so it's got a nice, that makes sense. So yeah, first impression of this one is it's got a lovely kind of just big bready element to it, but it's got an element of sweetness in there as well, and then it's a big oily, juicy kind of thing. It smells like your typical sort of European brewed West Coast IPA actually. So yeah, it is a little bit nostalgic, this one, because you don't find so many beers that have this aroma these days. But let's try and break that down for you a little bit more and describe it more kind of succinctly, we should say. But yeah, backbone of this beer is a lovely kind of bread crusty, a kind of smooth white and bread crusty element to it. It smells like some of the fresh bread that I used to get down in Germany at the bakeries. I miss those German bakeries in Heidelberg so much actually. But yeah, the backbone of this beer, it's like a big, thick, smooth white bread. That's your Munich malts that is going to give you that. Then you also get the kind of bread crusty elements in there, which I think are going to be mainly the melanoidin malt actually. But there's a good kind of brown sugary sort of sweetness to this beer as well. It's quite a straight shooting malt base in a lot of ways, but that works for it. It really does work for it. So you can definitely smell a bit of a kind of straight up sweet caramel to this one, but you also get an element of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing out of it. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on in this beer, absolutely. And the more that you smell of it as well, the more sweet it gets, and it does start to lean a little bit more towards that grainy biscuity end of the spectrum as well. So that's certainly an interesting point to make about this beer for sure. So yeah, big juicy, just big juicy oily aromas coming out of this one. But to be honest, I think that kind of covers the sort of malty side of things. White bread crust, sweet kind of caramel there, and also a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of things. A very straight shooting malt base. In my opinion, West Coast IPAs can kind of go in two directions. They can either be big and oily and caramelly, or they can be, you know, it's kind of more bready leaning. And I discovered that when I had Pliny the Elder for the first time, that, you know, that really was a thing, that they could be a bit more sort of bready and stuff like this. But this one seems it. I think this is going to kind of straddle the line between the two sort of ends of the West Coast IPA spectrum, actually. So be curious to see how that does turn out. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things. So yeah, the green component of this beer, there is a wee touch of earthiness to this one, which I think is going to come mainly from the Columbus and the Mosaic. Those will both give you a little touch of earthiness, but you can smell that big, you can smell that nice big deep floral aromaticity that you're going to get. All of the hops are going to contribute to that, of course, but you get a little bit of the spiciness from Columbus, of course. What it probably is that Columbus and potentially a bit of the Cascade, I would think, are being used as the early addition hop. Remember, West Coast IPAs are far more reliant on early addition hops. This is when you get the big bitterness out of them, because as you go through the wort boil, you've got a trade-off basically from bitterness towards you know, more kind of juicy and oily fruity characteristics, of course. So yeah, late flavour and aroma basically the further you go on in the wort boil. But this beer, it doesn't smell as if it's going to be madly bitter, so I'm curious to see how that plays out, because it doesn't, you don't get such a kind of hoppy dryness and bitterness and things like that from the aroma. But there's a lovely grassy component to this one as well, and that is a little bit more distinctive of Cascade. The grassiness that you get out of this one is, you know, a little bit smooth, but at the same time it's got a wee tiny it's got a wee bit of zestiness in there as well, and it's just the experience that's telling me that comes across as being a little bit more sort of Cascade-like, Cascade-esque, could we say. But yeah, the green component of this one is quite nice. Wee bit of earthiness, nice deep floral aromaticity, little touch of spiciness but not too much, and then a lovely kind of smooth grassiness in it for me. So let's focus on the fruity side of things. And this beer is big and orangey. You've got quite a lot of orangey character to this one, but that makes sense when you've got Summit, Amarillo and Mosaic all at play in here. So yeah, for me, straight away, it's just a big, oily, orangey character. Amarillo, I think, is going to give you a good bit of the oily orange. You can smell a bit of the lighter tangerine from the Mosaic in there as well. I'm not sure exactly what Summit is going to do. I need to get a single hop Summit beer and, you know, fully understand what that hop is all about, actually, because I've only ever had it in mixes. I've never had it on its own before, but I would have guessed that it's just kind of amplifying the kind of orangey character of this one. But it's got a lovely balance between a big, thick, oily orange from the Amarillo and the lighter tangerines from the Mosaic. Absolutely. So this beer, I think it really does lean towards the more oily, orangey end of the IPA spectrum. But in fairness, behind that, you do get a little bit of an apricot-y note in there. You can smell you know, wee bits of kind of you know, papaya and a little bit of pineapple and things like that, and that will be the Idaho 7, the Simcoe, and that will be giving you that mainly. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that out of this beer for sure. There is a wee touch of a more pungenty passion fruit sort of thing, and that's going to be the Simcoe that's giving you that. So I think the orangey notes really take the lead in this beer, but you start to get the softer tropical notes behind it when your nose adjusts to that big oily orange hit that the beer has. But you can certainly smell a little bit of that almost figgy type note from the Cascade in there as well. It's almost like the Cascade is the backbone and the soft tropical notes are sitting on top of it, but then the really pungent oily orange characters are pushing their way out of the beer as well when the more that you smell of it. So yeah, big sweet in the malt base, this one, but smooth as well. Nice kind of green component to it. Big oily orangey notes, but a bit of a soft kind of tropical back in for me. This is a lovely smelling beer. Let's just put the rest of it in, and then I think it's about time to try this one. I actually, if you watch some of my older Amager Bryghus videos, I used to have an Amager Bryghus tulip glass, but unfortunately the bottom, this bit, just came clean off it, and I couldn't fix it. I didn't have access to a glass blower to fix it because it was definitely fixable. So yeah, I was gutted when I lost that glass. But anyway, so yeah, let's get stuck into this one. This is the batch 2000, a 7% West Coast IPA from Amager Bryghus in Copenhagen over in Denmark. Let's get stuck in. Slange, Skull, cheers. Oh yeah, that's properly old school, that. Yeah, I'm just going to say straight away, thumbs up to Amager Bryghus here. This is a properly old school West Coast IPA. I think it's got a good bit of bitterness to it as well. I was a wee bit worried when I smelled the Columbus, thinking it might not be as bitter, but it does have that bitter kick to it, and it comes out a wee bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, this is damn solid once again. So as I say, well done to Amager Bryghus for this. This is very nice. So yeah, it's exactly, it's kind of exactly what you would expect from the aroma. This is one of these beers that the aroma really carries over into the flavour pretty damn well. So backbone of the beer for me, just try and break this down. This beer really gets a big bitter kick to it in the aftertaste, actually, when your mouth is adjusting to it. But yeah, straight away across the middle of your palate, then you can feel that nice, smooth, white bready note from the Munich malts, and you can feel that it's sort of smoothened out by the melanoidin kind of things. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, you start to get a little bit more of the kind of bread crusty, grainy kind of thing. And if you're sitting in the middle third of your palate, towards the front half of that middle third of your tongue, you get a little bit more of the kind of bread crusty, grainy elements there, and the same at the back. As you reach those kind of border regions, you start to get a wee bit more of a kind of bread crusty element out of the beer. So I certainly can appreciate that, absolutely. But yeah, the flavour profile of this beer is very, very nice. Yeah, the malty side it translates really well, but sitting on top of that bready layer that you start off with from the Munich and the melanoidin malt, straight in the middle of the palate, you can get a little bit. You do get a kind of sweet caramelly element to this one, and this is a characteristic of the West Coast IPAs for me. You always get this little bit of boozy brown sugar out of the beer, but to me, if I was tasting this blind without knowing the malts, I would be surprised that this is Pilsner malt rather than something like Cara Munich or straight up caramel, because it really has a big, lovely oily character to it. So to me, that would indicate perhaps they have done a slightly longer boil on this beer just to kind of caramelise the sugars a little bit more. So potentially, this could be a slightly, like 120-minute boil IPA or something like this. I'm just guessing here, but yeah, the oiliness of that brown sugar in the middle of the palate there is nice. So yeah, you've got a little oily circle right in the dead centre of your palate. Then as you move further out from that, it gets a little bit more sort of biscuity, and it gets progressively more biscuity, and it's more like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit. I don't know how good a point of reference that is for Dane's right enough, but yeah, that for me, that's what it's really like. But I think this beer's had a little bit of a longer boil to it, and that would explain the colour as well, come to think of it. So yeah. But yeah, lovely, lovely beer. This one on the malty side of things, very, very old school actually. This one, it's got a good bready backbone to it, but at the same time it starts to lean more towards the kind of oily, brown sugary end of the West Coast spectrum the more that you drink of it. But as I say, thumbs up to Amager Bryghus for this one. So yeah, that's the middle third of your palate, quite straight shooting. So on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of a bready build up. There's a wee touch of there's a wee touch of a more kind of bread crusty, grainy element there. Then on the back third of your palate, you can feel it is distinctly more kind of grainy on that back third of your tongue, more of the melanoidin malt coming out, I think. But sitting on top of that, you get some of the nice airy yeasty esters in there. So at the back of the palate, the beer is kind of like this thick, with all those airy esters sitting on top. It gradually condenses down as you come further forward. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it's a little bit more. It feels a little bit more squashed and condensed together. So yeah, I really like how that comes out in this one. The feel of the malt base in this beer is also very good. I think the malt base tends to be a little bit overlooked in a lot of beers actually. But anyway, on to the hoppy side of things for this beer then. There's definitely a big powerful earthiness in the back corners of the palate there. Again, that'll be Mosaic and the Columbus that are going to give you that. But as you move further forward, the earthiness does spread forward a little bit, but then you really get these big, powerful, spicy green elements from the Columbus there. I think Columbus, and I think a wee bit of the Cascade has been used as an early addition hop in this one, because this has got that big, powerful Columbus bitterness to it. You know, Amager Bryghus always used to like to use a bit of Tomahawk as well, and quite often you've got a bit of Chinook in there, but this one hasn't included those, but it works. It absolutely works. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, you've got a lighter grassiness to it, and it's got a real smoothness to it as well, which I certainly like. But yeah, as I say, the flavour profile of this, beer, on the green side of things, I think really suits it as proper old school West Coast IPA in that sense. So that's another plus point for me. But let's focus on the front third of your palate then, where you get all these kind of fruity elements coming out of it. So yeah, border region again between front third and middle third of your palate, bit of a bready build up and a bit of graininess in there as well. In the base of that front third of your tongue, bit of a kind of wholemealy, brown bready sort of thing, and a smooth white bready element underneath. That works for it. Then on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So if you go to the very back of that front third of your palate, there's quite a powerful grapefruity element to this one, and that I would guess it's probably coming from Summit a little bit. Like Summit is supposed to be very powerful and grapefruity, but the Cascade I think will contribute to that as well. But I think going by the sheer level of that in it, I think it's probably the Summit that makes sense, and that is the high alpha acid one. So 16%, it's a bit of a monster. It's like Nelson Sauvin in that sense. But yeah, there is a big powerful grapefruity element there. As you move further forward from that, you get a stronger passion fruity note out of it. That's going to come from the Simcoe, I would think. But then you've got Idaho 7 in there as well, which can also contribute to that. Absolutely. Idaho 7 can give you a little bit of a passion fruit, but it tends to be a more kind of soft and lighter tropical fruit note. But we have to remember this is a West Coast IPA, and hops behave slightly differently depending on what kind of malt base you put them with, whether it's an oat and wheaty based malt base or whether it's a more kind of brown sugary based malt base like in the West Coast IPAs. So potentially, yeah, Idaho 7 and Simcoe are the ones that are going to give you a bit of the passion fruit in there as well. But as you move towards the very middle of that front third of your palate, you get some of these lighter tropical fruit notes as well. You get a wee bit of a kind of dried apricot in there. There's a wee bit of a kind of sort of papaya and pineapple-y note as well for me. There's some really soft elements there right in the middle of that front third of your front third of your tongue. But then on the front half of the front third of your tongue, it's also very, very nice. So yeah, as you move on to that, you've got as you move into that front half, you get a big oily orangey character, and that's probably going to come from the Amarillo. I'm glad to see Amarillo's coming back in a little bit, because Amarillo got forgotten about when Mosaic came out, and then it seems to be making its way back. But yeah, this has got a big oily orange character to it, and I think Summit will be contributing to that as well, from what I understand. But it's from experience, it's telling me that the Amarillo is the sort of backbone of the orangey part of the beer, and sitting on top of that, you'll get the lighter tangerine notes from the Mosaic as well. And there's almost like a wee bit of pineapple creeps over into the front half of that front third of your tongue from the tropical side of things too, and I think that is Mosaic that's going to give you that. As you move towards the very front tip of your tongue, there's potentially just a little touch of lime before you get on to the kind of grassy esters out of the beer. But yeah, this is one of these beers that translates from the aroma very well into the flavour. It's got the fruity side of the beer, big oily orangey hit, that dominates. You've got a bit of soft tropical fruit behind it. And the other thing as well is as you go further into the aftertaste, you just get a little touch of that lighter kind of figgy note that you would expect of Cascade. You really get quite a bit of that soft Cascade, almost just little figgy note sitting underneath, almost right in the dead centre of that front third of your palate. Coming out, that comes out more in the aftertaste, just underneath the orangey notes. So yeah, this beer works very, very well, and I think that summarises the flavour of it quite well actually. So this is a proper old school beer for me, and I really like this. So big thumbs up to Amager Bryghus once again. But yeah, let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So I always get excited with these West Coast IPAs because it's still a little bit. I'm glad to see that the IPA thing is diversifying a little bit, but it's quite rare to find a West Coast IPA that is, you know, quite as authentically old school, if that makes sense, as this one is. So mouthfeel wise, for me this is top end and mid bodied. It's one of the thicker West Coast IPAs that I've come across. It's got a lovely big oily smoothness to it, which I can certainly appreciate. There's it's got a good, as I say, yeah, big oily smoothness. This one it does have a degree of smoothness too, but yeah, top end and mid bodied for me, this beer. Smooth carbonation, a bit of an oily slickness, and it works really well. The malt base for me has a bit of smoothness. There is a bit of graininess, and I think of this beer, it does get a little touch more grainy the further you go into the aftertaste, but there's a good oily brown sugary note to it and a little bit of a grainy biscuity element also. But this one does have quite a big bitterness to it. I think this must be about 70 maybe 80 IBUs actually, so there is a fair wee bit of a bitter hit to this one. It's not quite as bitter as I remember the batch 100 being, but it's certainly got that old school West Coast bitterness to it, absolutely, then a big massive oily juicy fruity character to it. So everything you would want from an old school West Coast IPA, but the big breadiness that it has gives it a bit more of a European brewed West Coast IPA feel, and I certainly like that. So yeah, the German malt's really coming out in this one very nicely. But yeah, I think we can round off the review there then. Another awesome West Coast IPA from Amager Bryghus, and properly old school in my opinion, which I really like. So yeah, awesome stuff. So this one was the batch 2000, a 7% West Coast IPA from Amager Bryghus in Kastrup over in Copenhagen, one of my favourite Danish breweries. And this beer really hit the spot for me. Big oily orange West Coast IPA, smooth breadiness, sweet caramel, and then a good bit of a bitter bite to it as well. So yeah, big thumbs up to Amager for this one, and I certainly look forward to the next beer that I have from these guys too. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Amager Bryghus as well. We will return to these guys quite soon. I do have a big beast of a beer that I want to review from them, so you'll see that some stage soon. But yeah, this was the batch 2000 7% West Coast IPA from Amager Bryghus in Kastrup, Copenhagen in Denmark. Nice to get this one on the channel. I was worried about missing this, but we managed it. Slange, skull, cheers, and catch you guys in the next review. Make sure you try this beer, 100%.